is not new. A scientific milestone in this area came in the 1960s when Dr. Jose Delgado demonstrated remote control over a charging bull. By connecting a radio antenna to electrodes inserted into the bull's brain, Delgado proved that the animal's aggressive impulses could be thwarted by electronically manipulating the bull's muscle reflexes.
Do you realize the fantastic possibilities if from the outside we could modify the inside? Could we give messages to the inside? But the beauty is that now we are not using electrodes.
In recent years, Delgado has shown that the behavior of monkeys can be altered using low-power, pulsating magnetic fields. But in these experiments, there were no antenna implants.
Any function in the brain, emotions, intellect, personality, well, could be perhaps modified by this non-invasive technology.
Delgado's research has so far been limited to animals. But in the Soviet Union, a radio frequency, or RF device, has been used for over 30 years to manipulate the moods of mental patients.
We're going to take a quick look into the effects that our diet has on our behavior and our attitudes, and why we should eat to live.
Get ready for power. Prince's Power Hour podcast. One, two, three, and
4. Welcome back to another installment of Prince's Power Hour podcast, where hopefully, we're having intellectual, intelligent, well thought out, curated conversations with the objective of not just informing you and edifying you, but erecting a spirit in you that would allow you and cause you to overcome your current reality and circumstance. It's a late night show, but the show must go on, and even though it is a late night show, we're going to get right into it. I don't want to take too much of your time, but we got to have this conversation. And as I stated right before the opening, so before I go into why we should eat to live and the reason behind the subject matter, I kind of just want to discuss very briefly, what we've been doing here. These last couple of weeks, we've been really diving into the psychology of our reality, our circumstances, the conditions that we face, how we see ourselves, how we see the world, how we see others, and how to formulate and cultivate the proper orientation to overcome our current reality and circumstance. All of these dovetail into the other, right? Each class is really, each message, each podcast, each conversation is really just a continuation of the other. So ideally, they're going to be a series, right? We can listen to them, though it can be episodic or you can listen to them individually. But the key is to understand that they all are one leading to the other. They all are connected and intertwined, and they all are needed, right, for the complete picture that we ultimately are looking to paint. So when we talk about the reality of our condition, right? When we really look at our circumstance, one of the most crucial points that I try to press upon us is the reality of our history, right? People, whether they are conscious of it or not, are tethered to their history. They're tethered to their history. So your sociology, your psychology, your biology, is all tied to your history. The health or the lack thereof is directly affected to your history, right? You are a product of the past, and the future is a product of what you do in the present based on the knowledge that you have accumulated from the past. So a people's success is commensurate of their knowledge of their history. I'm going to say that again. A people's success is contingent on, is equal to their ability to process and understand their history, to learn from it, and to build on it. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad wrote 2 books, How to Eat to Live. And for me, that's such an important subject matter, because if you relegate it to just dietary practices, I mean the consuming of physical food, you really don't understand the profundity of it, the profoundness of it, the impact of it, right? Scripture says that man can't live off bread alone, but every word that proceedeth out his mouth, right? Like, the reality of what we put in our body is reflective of what comes out of our body, what comes out of our mouth, right? The thoughts that we think, that we materialize. And so, though I'm going to be framing this subject around the physical consumption of food, I want us to understand that it is not relegated, it is not simplified, it's not limited to the consumption of just fruits and vegetables. No. It's the consumption of everything that we need to survive. What are we consuming? What is our diet based off? What is our conversational diet? Right? What is our intellectual diet? I just said the importance of history, right? History is best qualified to reward its research. What history are we consuming with historical accuracy? What physical activities are we participating in? What are we physically doing with our bodies to produce the desired effect, which is longevity and vitality? To have utility. So, I want to broach that subject matter with that in mind. So I'm going to be talking about the psychological, the neurological, the behavioral and emotional effects of what we eat, and why it's so important. So let's go right into it. Dietary practices play a significant role on both our psychology and our neurology, right? These effects are mediated through various mechanisms, including the regulation of the neurotransmitters and the pathways that cause inflammation, that cause the healthy sending or the synaptic transmission of the nerves, right? The way you think, the ability to send the proper signals from your brain to your heart to other body parts, your ability to send those electrical signals from your brain to your hand to pick up a pen or to pick up a pencil is based on, not primarily, well, not solely rather, but primarily on what you eat. On what you eat. So when we look at the different health ailments, the physical health ailments, it's directly connected to what we consume. Our psychological effects, right? Our mood regulation, depression, anxiety, it's directly connected, to our socialization. It's directly connected to other factors, traumatic experiences that we have been victimized by. But the thing that is constantly overlooked, because we're in such a microwave era, we're in such a time period where everything is on the go and everything is fast paced, and we're victims of this modern processed reality where everything we eat is damn near artificial or filled with chemicals and artificial ingredients, that the reality of processed foods and high sugar, processed sugars are associated but are the cause of an increase in anxiety and depression. Your brain can't properly function. Your psychology is thrown off when you consume a diet of processed foods. Proper nutrition is crucial for maintaining cognitive function. Right? So we're going to discuss that. I want to read something very briefly. Then we're going to go into it. Psychological effects of diet. It is well documented and associated between diet and mental health conditions such as depression and anxiety. Diets rich in fruits, vegetables, and omega-3 fatty acids are linked to reduced symptoms of depression, while diets high in processed foods and sugars are associated with increased risks of depression and anxiety. Let's stop right there. Why we should eat to live, right? I think it's very hypocritical, and I think it's very unintelligent to have a conversation about revolution, about empowerment, about self-determination, and all of these critical factors that need to be discussed, that need to be outlined, that need to be not just at the forefront of the conversations that we have amongst one another between generations. These things have to be discussed, but it can't be at the cost of excluding the proper dietary practices that are needed to sustain the health, the mentality, and the psychology to even enact those things. Listen, you cannot fight a war on any front if you don't have the proper diet, if you're not consuming the proper foods to sustain the body, the mind, and the spirit, to equip the body, the mind, and the spirit to fight, one, not just against your oppressor, but against the decay that happens when you are not in line, when you are not in harmony with the body's need to protect and sustain itself. It says diets rich in fruits and vegetables. See, I'm not saying nothing that you ain't already heard, brothers and sisters. I'm very clear. The scripture says it in 1 Genesis 1:29. The proper diet. The diet that the fruits will be your meat, right? But I think sometimes, now it's a two-pronged approach now, but sometimes we forget that. And our desire to move again throughout, our daily requirements and obligations, we, in most cases, sacrifice proper nutrition to be what we call more effective in other areas because it's too time consuming or it's too costly. And so in an attempt to try to mitigate, our expenditures financially or to save on time, we opt out for the foods that are more destructive to our bodies and our minds and our spirits. But look what it costs us long term. Look, take a step back. When you go out into the world, look at the reality and the condition of our people. Tell me if the revolution first shouldn't be the health, the war and the fight on our physical health through our dietary practices. Look at the obesity. Hell, you don't even have to be overweight. Look at those who are malnutrition. Just because you're not overweight, you don't have a gut, that don't mean you're in good health, brothers and sisters. Look at the fatigue. Look at the weariness on the faces of our people. Look at the yellow eyes. the jaundice that they have in their eyes. Look at the skin. Like, they're all indicators of proper dietary health. How many of us can do the physical requirements of maybe 15 push-ups, 20 push-ups, 5 pull-ups, 25 sit-ups, can walk a couple miles, right? These things that seem simple, things that as children, well, that's not the case anymore because our children are suffering from obesity more than anybody now. I digress that point at this particular moment. But think about when we were young in the previous generations where we could run up and down the street, park all day long without any regard. And now in our 20s, our 30s, our 40s, we're incapable of going up a flight of stairs. Why we should eat to live. Mood regulation. Nutritional psychiatry suggests that certain nutrients affect mood and emotional regulation. For instance, omega-3 fatty acids have been shown to reduce inflammation, which is linked to depression, while deficiencies in vitamins such as B12 can lead to mood disorders. A lot of times, our depression, look at this. We've seen an increase in depression, right? During the pandemic 2020. What was some of the contributing factors? One, a lot of us was on lockdown. We were unwilling, incapable, or just not desirous of leaving our homes based on the fear of contracting this lethal disease. And so we opted out of going outside and getting something simple as vitamin D. A lot of us opted out of going to the grocery stores, and a lot of stores didn't have proper groceries. The food declined precipitously due to the fact that a lot of the chains, the supply chains were cut off or limited. We also seen that convenience played a factor, or what we considered safety. So a lot of us call Uber Eats, but unfortunately, a lot of the healthier, quote unquote, fast food places were closed down and shut down. And the only thing that were made available to us was places like McDonald's and Wendy's and Burger King. So we increased in our diet, if we already wasn't on a diet of those things, heavy processed foods. And so now we start to see an increase in depression, but never looked at obviously the socialization played a tremendous role, right? But look at the reality of the dietary practices that we had that mirrored those social detriments that we faced during that time. And look at what we've still practicing today. Look at the back of your labels. Look at the back of your labels. Look at what we see, especially in the inner cities, particularly the black communities, where they say criminality and behavioral issues, ADHD, and all of these different things are disproportionately affecting black youth. But what the hell are they eating? What are they feeding? Hot country curls with cheese, spicy pickles that's been sitting in citric acid and all these other things with dye and food coloring. The furthest thing from a dilled cucumber and vinegar. It's the furthest thing from that. We're severely dehydrated because we eat things that are high in salt and high in sugar. So even if we drink a little water, it's negligible in its effect due to the fact that our diets are full with so much salt. The processed stuff that we eat, filled with salts and additives. Then we got the nerve and audacity to put more salt on it because our taste buds are been numbed due to the fact that we've never actually eaten a vegetable for what it is, or well, we don't eat those things, but the food that we have to eat is so artificial that we have to put so much salt on it just to consume it, just to make it something that we can digest, palatable. We're fighting a war, but we're fighting the wrong enemy in most cases. I want us to really understand this. We're fighting the wrong enemy in most cases. Let me continue on. Cognitive function. Proper nutrition is crucial for maintaining cognitive function. I talked about this earlier. When you talk about neuroplasticity, synaptic plasticity, right? The ability for our body to adapt and learn and develop healthier neurological pathways. It is severely impaired when it does not have the necessary amino acids, vitamins, and nutrients. Neurological effects. The neurotransmitter function. Nutrients can influence the neurotransmitter pathways, which are crucial for brain function. For example, amino acids from proteins are precursors to neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, which are vital for mood and cognitive function. You know, I spoke last week about the dopamine hits that we seek, right? And just look at this. The food contributes when your brain lacks the necessary nutrition to properly function and to send the proper healthy signals throughout the body. It impairs it to a degree that now your body is seeking, right, these necessary phytonutrients, chemicals that are essential for proper homeostasis, and it looks and searches for it in the food. But the food that it gets is high in sugars, high in salts, right? Have some type of imagery that's connected to something that is socially accepted as delicious or tasty through advertisements and these different things, right? So now you're easily suggestible and easily programmable, right? Your mind is malleable because its proper function has been distorted and disrupted due to what you eat. And so now they're able to feed you more of the wrong things because you have been programmed through their advertisement, through their propaganda channels, that this is actually food. I know we're going through it fast and we're discussing a lot of things, but I want us to hear the importance of why, if we don't eat to live, we will surely die. Neurological disorders. Nutritional deficiencies or imbalances can contribute to the development of neurological disorders. For instance, deficiencies in micronutrients such as B12, B2, iron, copper can lead to neurological symptoms. When you don't put in the body what is needed for the body to sustain itself, it will not function properly. That's analogous to you not putting gasoline or motor oil in your vehicle. It will not run. If you put the improper gas or motor oil in your vehicle, it will not run properly. Because we've got accustomed, like some of you guys do when you ride in your car, you think that sound is normal. You think that jerking is normal because you've been doing it for so long, but it's not the way the car was intended to drive. We have, in like fashion, been operating under the false pretense that this is normal and we're living healthy lives. We've equated not being laid up in a hospital bed or in a grave as seemingly healthy. But we're functioning at such a low level that everything we do is pushing us closer and closer to the grave at a rate that is unprecedented. And I know some of us are saying, well, or the history, the science is saying that we're living longer than ever. Based on what standard? History is best qualified to reward its research. Go to areas, go to communities where our people are living in harmony with their nature, have the proper culture, the proper dietary practices, are living off the land, are growing their own food, so forth and so on. They call them blue zones. They're living a long time. See, we base our form of progress and mode off the European cycles of time. And when you do that, you put yourself at a grave disadvantage. So you think this is progress. You think this is normacy. You think this is an evolution and an elevated form of thought and action. And in actuality, we are regressing and not progressing. All of those things, micronutrients, are found in the soil. I'm not here to promote veganism, but I will say that if you want to put in the body what the body needs, what's already in the body, it's found in the soil. For it is the source of life. And it seems intelligent that we would eat from the very thing that doesn't just feed the planet, which is the soil, but is made of the same genetic or the nutrients that we are made of. Certain dietary components can offer neuroprotective benefits. Certain diets that are rich in antioxidants and anti-inflammatory foods have been associated with lower risks of neurodegenerative diseases. Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, other neurodegenerative diseases is linked to inflammation in the brain. Inflammation in the brain is too much sugar and processed unnatural chemicals. When you consume too much of inflammatory foods and ingredients, it will cause disruption, decay, and the destruction of the vital organs that we need to survive. I'm going to finish reading this. Gut-brain axis. The gut-brain axis plays a significant role in the interaction between the diet and mental health. Proper gut health can influence mood and cognitive function through the production of neurotransmitters and the modulation of inflammation. Your gut is directly the gut has a mind of its own, right? It is a high sophisticated level of intelligence. We always limit our mind to our brain, but the mind it's so much more complex than just the brain. The brain is an organ. It functions. It's the control center. It sends signals from the control center throughout the body to tell it to do this and that. But the mind is the very essence of our intelligence. Not to get what people would call religious, but it's the spirit in which we are imbued with that actually gives us life. And that's why the gut has a high level of intelligence. And when you cloud or compromise gut health, it directly affects the brain because they're interconnected. So if you constantly are constipated, it affects your what? It affects your mood, it affects your cognitive function. When you are suffering from flatulence and these different things, it affects your mental, your emotional, and your cognitive functions. When you eat things that you see, your gut talks to you and speaks to you in more ways than you can imagine. When you have an upset stomach, don't look at it as minuscule. It's your body talking to you, telling you that you're either in a deficit based on the lack of not eating something that is nutritious and beneficial and healthy for you, or you overconsumed something that is inflaming your gut, therefore compromising the rest of your body. And so, yeah, you're not dead, but you're limited in your capacity to function at a high level or to function in its proper context. Inflammation. Diets high in anti-inflammatory foods can reduce the risk of depression and other mental health issues. Chronic inflammation is linked to various psychiatric and neurological conditions, and dietary interventions can help modulate this inflammation. You can't escape the reality of our psychology and our dietary practices. Got a program here in Chicago that we're pushing like I don't know what. You want to help cure, or you want to help mitigate, as I don't want to just say cure. Let me speak intelligently. If you want to reduce adolescent behavioral disruptions and problems in the schools, allow us to implement more plant-based items where they can have nutrient-rich foods that allow their brain to form and function in a healthy way, so that now their psychology and their emotional state is balanced, whether now they can make intelligent decisions about their lives, themselves, their other fellow students, so forth and so on. So that they can have the energy to attack their schoolwork in a healthy way. Energy metabolism. Nutrients affect energy metabolism in the brain, influencing the synaptic plasticity and cognitive function. For example, glucose regulation is crucial for maintaining cognitive function, and imbalances can lead to mood disorders. If you know anybody who suffers from diabetes, you know exactly how emotionally unstable they can be. But it's not of their own volition. When their glucose is thrown off, their metabolism, so is their cognitive function, so is their emotional stability, so is their psychology. So when we look at the profound effects on psychological and neurological health, the preventive measures of managing mental health conditions and neurological disorders is intrinsically tied into what we eat. I want us to eat to live. Let me read one more thing. Because I spoke about the children. And this is something that's very important and crucial to me. A lot of what we do is to create an environment that the next generation can inherit a better reality than the one that we had. We want to leave things better off than what they were, not worse. Our obligation as adults, whether we accept it or not, is to not leave the planet off in a worse condition than we found it. Not to leave our environments and our societies in a worse condition than which we found it. behavior effects in children. This is still the dietary. Malnutrition and behavior. Malnutrition in children can lead to behavior problems and cognitive deficits. For instance, children who experience malnutrition as infants often show lower academic performances and increased conduct problems as they grow older. The malnutrition that our children suffer from, the early age of fast processed foods, the inundation of sugary products, sugary juices, not eating proper fruits and vegetables, not being exposed to actual fruit and the juice from fruit, rather sugary water that's full of dyes and high fructose corn syrup. When we talk about a generation who is academically behind other nations and other people, especially those in the public school systems, those in the low economic areas, we're talking about a reality of malnutrition for the most part. See, these things can be remedied fairly easy with the right people in position to implement the necessary change. That's why one of the most revolutionary things was the free lunch program and the free breakfast program that the Black Panthers did. And it was one of the most dangerous because they were feeding children, equipping them with the proper nutrition that they needed to be effective learners, to be cognitively and psychologically present in school, so they could be aware enough, some cases, of the inappropriateness of the school that they were participating in. Food allergies and sensitivities. I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna let it go. A lot of what we eat in this standard American diet and Western diet, African Black people are extremely sensitive to, if not allergic. And though we have curated some type of tolerance, the reality is that it's not designed for our bodies. And so it speaks to food allergies and sensitivities in children and how it causes agitation and behavioral issues. A lot of the health issues, ailments that we have, at being asthmatic, having certain diabetes even as children, bronchitis. We have a lot of different things that our children are faced with. It's diet related. Eliminating these foods from the diet can lead to rapid improvements in both physical and behavioral symptoms. Listen to that. When you eradicate, you eliminate, when you remove those foods that are causing the agitation and the behavioral issues, it almost instantaneously improves the physical and behavioral symptoms that most doctors say they can't find a solution or a healthy remedy to. Nutrition composition. The composition of a child's diet can exert both immediate and long-term effects on behavior. For example, deficiency in essential nutrients can lead to aggressiveness and other behavioral issues, whereas a balanced diet can improve mental performance and behavior. We see the decline in respect in our communities, in the ability to discern and to properly process information relative to our own health and our own survival. Common sense. It's a nutrient deficiency. Let me continue. Behavior effects in adolescents and adults. Dietary behavioral change. Change in dietary behaviors is complex and influenced by multiple factors, including environmental, personal, and social detriments. Interventions that lead to this focus on these factors, especially in the socio-economical disadvantaged groups, can lead to sustainable changes in dietary behaviors and associated with improvements in overall behavior. This is for adolescents and adults. Parental influence. Parents play a significant role in shaping their children's dietary habits, which in turn affect their behavior. Children often imitate their parents' eating habits, and modeling this can establish long-term dietary behaviors. We always hear that this disease, this dysfunction that I have is hereditary. What is hereditary is the behavior that caused the disease in your parents, your grandparents, and whoever else that is causing it in you. We emulate and imitate the behaviors of our parents, including their dietary practices. We don't eat chitlins and hog mugs in 2024 because it's a health benefit. Not even because we like the taste. We do it because it's habitual. And we are having this conversation because just like we eat those hog mugs, just like we eat those chitlins, just like we eat those pig feet, just like we eat certain other unhealthy food groups, we're also realizing the behavior that is associated with it. The social dynamic that's associated with it. The reality of our current reality, I said history, whether we're conscious of it or not, is tethered to a people's success. History is us playing out the behavioral. History is us understanding the behavioral practices of those who preceded us. Our present day circumstance is us living out our ancestors, our parents, and those who preceded us actions and behaviors. We don't change unless we change. It doesn't change unless we stop and address the reality of our circumstances. Listen, I pride myself, and this is something I had to come through as I continue to heal my traumas and go through my own therapeutic journey. I prided myself on learning and consuming as much information as possible so that I am knowledgeable and equipped and I have utility in my day-to-day interactions with myself, with my family, with my communities, and even with my enemy, right? So I prioritize the consumption of information. And I realize as I continue to develop, and I said, but this ain't it. This isn't giving me the drastic change that I thought it would. Though it has helped and has improved significantly, right? But then I realized most of us should not prioritize getting new information, but it's unlearning those misinformation and those practices that we had before. My light went out. There we go. Some of us have to unlearn the information that was destructive before we start learning new things. You can't put new wine in old bottles. We're having this conversation because to eat to live is to live. And to live is to position ourselves with the ability to have a future. Why we should eat to live. Understanding the war first starts with our own practices and behavioral patterns that has been destructive and disruptive to our growth into our healing. The reality of our dietary practices has a profound impact on our behavior, influencing cognitive abilities, emotional regulation, and social interactions. Addressing dietary issues with a targeted intervention can lead to significant behavioral outcomes and improvement in cognitive function. Some other things I want to go through, but I'm going to stop right here. It is kind of late, and it's going to be a part 2 though. Don't worry, I'm coming back. Part 2, because I want to give, I always got to give the answer, right? So I want to curate some practices, and I want to go to the other aspect of it as well, of not just being consumers in our pursuit of eating to live, but being producers. But I will leave us with this. We cannot fight on any front if we don't have the necessary requisite health to fight disease, to fight malnutrition, to fight all of those comorbidities that are killing us within. We have to fight miseducation. We have to fight these behavioral practices and dietary practices that have been destructive in our community. The greatest revolution that we can fight right now is the revolution on health. And our health is always interconnected. Our mental health is connected to our social health. This is connected to our economic health, which is connected to our physical health, which is produced and exacerbated by our dietary health. I thank you for listening. I leave you as I greeted you in the words of peace. Shalom alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you. And I don't think I said it, so I must end with it. Giving all honor and praise to our creator of the heavens, of the earth, and those ancestors who've given their lives so that we can be here. Thank you.